Welcome to Cardium from RES Medical, the podcast that gets to the heart of travel healthcare and asks, what's your why? With each episode, we explore the topics and issues that impact healthcare professionals in the fields of nursing and allied health. Now, here are your hosts, Sunny and Matt.
Welcome to another episode of Cardium. If you're a subscriber, welcome back. Thank you for being part of the Cardium family. If you're a new listener, thanks for stopping by. We hope you enjoy the podcast today, and we would love for you to subscribe so you can enjoy future podcasts. Joined with me, as always, is Sunny. Hi,
Hello.
Sunny.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm really well. You know, Sunny, there's a belief that, you never know who you're going to meet, especially when you're trying to put your best foot forward. And never more so this could be true when just this last November, I had the fortunate circumstance to attend the Staffing Industry Analyst Conference for Healthcare in Las Vegas. And I briefly had a conversation with today's guest.
That's exciting.
It was. And it was really exciting for me because our guest has been in the industry for a long time and has done a lot of different things throughout her career. But she's working for Staffing Industry Analysts today, and her knowledge about our industry is super deep. And she just brings so much knowledge and so much that she's done that I was very fortunate that I was able to talk with her. And I think we are fortunate that we can bring her on today as a guest.
Yeah, and especially to our listening audience because, for those that are not familiar, she's going to be able to kind of give us background on how important they are to our travelers, but also what kind of knowledge and baselines and trends and as well as research that they give us. Amy Chang is a recognized strategic expert in the healthcare staffing industry and is currently the healthcare analyst for the Staffing Industry Analyst from 2009 to 2016. Amy was VP of Strategy and Investor Relations for AMN Healthcare. After joining AMN in 2002, she led the strategic planning, operations analysis, and market research functions, and also served in interim operational leadership roles. Amy began her career as an auditor, CPA with KPMG after earning her Bachelor of Science in Business Administration from UC Berkeley. After earning her MBA from UC Berkeley, she was a strategy consulting manager at Mitchell Madison Group, where she worked with Fortune 500 clients. So welcome.
Hello, it's awesome to chat with you and with Sunny and Matt today. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us, Amy. It's good to see you again.
I'm actually kind of excited because I'm kind of a geek and I read a lot. And so just to have you, come and join us, and I read a lot of SIA articles and actually kind of be a part of that. And I love to do research, and just to have someone from SIA and to have you here, I'm really, really, really excited. So thank you. So, I know I can't actually touch you and have an autograph from you right now, but I'm pretty geeking out right now.
You are pretty starstruck. This is good.
and just so you know, I'm a secret nerd as well. So I think we probably resonate that way, but it's an honor to be on your podcast. I've been in the healthcare staffing industry for a long time. I'm a huge fan of the industry, and I have, so much respect for all of the clinicians that are out there serving our healthcare systems every single day.
That's awesome. And I don't think people realize how much information and analytics go into staffing. And so before we go any further, can you give us a little background on who and what is Staffing Industry Analysts?
Yes, so the Staffing Industry Analyst is it's considered the marquee research company that covers the entire staffing industry, both in the U.S. and globally. And a portion of that is the healthcare staffing industry here in the U.S. And so I specifically cover the healthcare staffing segment, and I do. I work with all of the SIA members, such as your company, and we do benchmarking studies so we can better understand, what's happening in the various segments, like, travel nursing is a segment, allied health staffing is a segment, so is per diem, and then there's also locum tenens. So we do a lot of benchmarking and research for those segments.
Okay.
Fantastic, Amy. And I think when you and I met last November in Las Vegas, that really is the pinnacle for healthcare staffing, what SIA covers as far as healthcare staffing. Maybe you can give our audience kind of today, what is the state of healthcare staffing at present? Kind of maybe job markets for the nurses and allied health professionals, and kind of go into that a little bit.
Yeah, it's a great time to be in the healthcare staffing industry. It's projected to be an $18.1 billion revenue generating industry in 2020, and the largest segment is travel nursing at 5.8 billion, followed by allied health staffing at 4.3 billion. Locums is not too shabby at 4.2 billion, and per diem nursing's at 3.8 billion. So, but you can see the majority is still nursing, right? Which is not a surprise, because there's 3.1 million employed nurses, registered nurses in our country today. And so not only is it a great time to be in the healthcare staffing world, it's a great time to be a clinician in the United States. If you look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics for the U.S., they recently published their new projections for the next decade. So over the next decade ending 2028, the BLS projects that, for example, registered nurse employment is going to grow 12%, and it'll make up there will be 3.4 million registered nurses, in our country. And, that's pretty exciting because they actually, for the entire U.S., U.S. employment is supposed to grow by 8.4 million. But just so you know, healthcare and social assistance is going to make up 3.4 of that 8.4 million. So our industry, being in healthcare, is going to make up 40% of the job growth in our country over 10 years. So it's an exciting time, I think, to be a clinician. The physician employment is going to grow to 7% over the decade, to about 812,000. So these are pretty significant numbers, and obviously these clinicians have a very significant impact in healthcare, because if you look at a hospital's operating budget, probably over half of its operating budget is made up of human capital, right, which is made up of these clinicians. So clinicians make up a very, very impactful role in our healthcare system.
Now you talk about, sorry, Matt, this growth and the huge amount of jobs that we're foreseeing. And we know, like, for nurses, we've been hearing for years that the reason why we're having this opening is because nurses are getting older and they're retiring. And the openings, but not a lot of people are going, not enough students are going into this, right? So can you foresee also what other reasons are causing this growth in the market?
Yeah, it's very interesting, right? Because one of the major drivers of healthcare in general, so how much healthcare gets delivered in our country. So believe it or not, having a stable economy contributes to that a lot. And so we've had an unprecedented number of years of stable growth in our country over the last decade. And so that's been very helpful to growth in healthcare, as well as access to healthcare. So, Obamacare, although it was implemented many years ago now, it really did give more people access to healthcare. There's more insureds, and so that really has helped to drive growth in healthcare over the years. That's also compounded by the fact that our population in the U.S. is growing in general, but it's also aging, which is what you sort of alluded to. And the interesting part about an aging population is that it impacts us in two different ways. One is that when you have an aging population, they tend to use more healthcare services per person. As they age, their acuity and health condition could be a little bit more intense and severe. But then we also are going to see more and more clinicians retiring, right? Because they're sort of aging at the same time. And so it's created a lot of, tightness in our job market. And so, an example of that is right now in our country, we've got a very low unemployment. In October of this year, of 2019, in the U.S., the BLS reported that, we were at a 3.6% unemployment rate in our country, but it's even lower in healthcare. So registered nurses had a 1.1% unemployment rate in the third quarter of 2019, if you can believe that. Physical therapists, even despite some of the disruption short-term disruption they've had, in their industry, they were reported at a 1% unemployment rate, and physicians were at a 0.4% unemployment rate, which feels sort of unbelievable, and that's likely contributed to this tightness that we've been feeling in healthcare in the job market.
And it's almost hard to believe that when you're dealing in the travel industry, because when you're working with clients, they might feel otherwise. They might be like, is there only a 1% unemployment rate because because of the need that we're feeling? But I think that's probably more geographically based than other, wouldn't you say?
It is geographic. And a question that you had just asked previously was around, is our country producing enough nurses?
Yeah.
And interestingly, if you look at the last 4 years, from 2015 to 2018, each of those 4 years, our country actually had a record high number of registered nurses or candidates passing the NCLEX registered nurse exam here in our country. So each of those 4 years, we were graduating over 160,000 nurses who were passing the NCLEX exam. So even despite being at an all-time high of nurses, passing the NCLEX exam and entering the registered nurse workforce, we still have unemployment rates that low. And so, I think a lot of folks would say that, yeah, there's a shortage. It's geographic. Interestingly, our government had put out a study on the nurse shortage, and they actually had said that, well, maybe we won't have a nurse shortage, right? But I think that anybody who's in our industry, and has been around in our industry, even in the last 5 years, would argue that, no, sure feels like we're having a shortage. And I actually read that study in depth, and one of the interesting things that I noticed was that their whole shortage model was based on the assumption that in 2014 our nurse supply equaled nurse demand. But I think anybody in our country who is doing travel nurse staffing or even per diem nurse staffing would say that, or even just being a healthcare recruiter would say, no, it did not feel like in 2014 like we did not have a nurse shortage. So it does feel like it's going to be geographic, and it does feel like there's certainly a nurse shortage today, especially with such low unemployment rates. And so in the long term, in even looking forward out until like 2030, it looks like the government is projecting that where there would be shortages, at least geographically, the largest shortages might be in places like in the West, in California, in the South, in Texas, and so those are at least two of the areas or states that are expected to have a nurse shortage.
Okay.
Fascinating, Amy. And I think I know the answer to this question, but I think it's important. Much of our audience are travel healthcare professionals. You mentioned the overall state of of nurses and allied health. Would you say that is also the state for travel healthcare professionals? So the demand is near equal, if not more, for travel, where that's concerned in the current state?
Do you mean like is the shortage just as bad for some of the allied health professionals? Is that what you're asking?
Correct. Yeah, well, both for nursing and allied. I think the the audience would be wondering, yes, the shortage is there overall nationwide, but when it really comes to much of our audience who are travel healthcare professionals, is there an equal demand, or is there even more of a demand for those types of folks that are willing to pack up their lives for 3 months at a time and move across the country to help out a hospital?
Yeah, especially.
Yeah, I mean, let me just give you some, anecdotal, interesting, points. So in 2020, for travel nursing, the whole industry is expected to grow, at 4%. And, one might feel like, well, that 4%, is sounds like modest growth. But the reality is that's actually higher growth than all of the other staffing sectors, outside of healthcare. So, healthcare is still growing at a relatively faster pace than even other industries within staffing. And so allied is expected to grow, allied health staffing is expected to grow by 3% in 2020, locums 4%, in per diem nursing 3%. So we're still seeing, pretty good year over year growth. And then other, anecdotes that, I would point to is, I mentioned, nurses and physicians earlier, but I mean, PTs are expected to grow by 22% over this decade. So by 2028, there's expected to be 302,000 employed physical therapists here in our country. And, another anecdote would be for nurse practitioners by 2028, over a 10-year period, they're expected to grow by 28%. Wow. So it really looks like, across many of the different healthcare specialties, right? There's going to be a strong employment in general in our healthcare systems. Folks have. In the BLS has been saying and projecting that certain healthcare settings are going to grow faster than others. And so, for example, outpatient is expected to grow, faster than, say, hospitals as far as employment goes. Can you imagine that by 2028, the BLS is projecting that outpatient care centers, their employment will grow by 35%.
Wow.
Home health care will grow by 48%. So those are some really, really high growth rates. And so that's really high, even compared to hospitals, which are expected to grow only 6% for employment by 2028. But, here's the thing, despite the amazing growth that we're expecting to see in outpatient and home health care, the thing is I don't think we can ignore the hospital setting, because even at 6% growth, they're going to employ, 6.5 million people, in our country, of which 3.7 million are going to be healthcare practitioners. Mm-hmm. So that's why, I'm still thinking they're going to be the largest employer, even though the mix of employment is going to be lower at hospitals. In absolute numbers, they are still going to be one of the largest, they're going to be the largest employer that we have in healthcare in the United States over the next 10 years. So, it's not to be, ignored. But in other parts of allied health, the projected employment is still expected to be in the double digits for, say, clinical lab techs, med techs, diagnostic techs, rad techs. So they're all expected to grow, in the double digits over the next 10 years. So, for people that, are clinicians, I think it's a great time to be a clinician, not just because of the robust job prospects, but also because it's, such a rewarding career.
It's really interesting when you put it that way. I think it's astonishing. The numbers are astonishing that you're talking to, and it really sounds like if you're a healthcare professional within any modality, you really are. If you want to work, there will be an opportunity to work, and not only that, there will be options of where you want to work. So depending upon the setting, you will be able to pretty much pick and choose of where you want to practice, which I think is a really exciting time for people that have chose to go into the field of helping people. And I think that that's really exciting for us too, especially our audience who may be maybe they're not years from retirement, but they might be the students that you referred to, Sunny.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think there's, you've thrown out a lot of numbers, and I think in layman's term too, I think there's a lot of contributing factors, with, to kind of drill it down, when you were talking about the growth of the outpatient centers, I think with I don't want to call it a fad because I'm hoping everybody's, joining the healthy train for longevity here. You're talking about people getting healthier. And so, but also coming with that is injuries, and you're talking about people, just working out. And I think, with skilled nursing facilities and hospitals that maybe cannot build as fast to take in all of the residents and the patients. And so home health is growing. And so I think there's reasons for all of this growth. But with this growth, it's coming at a faster pace. So I think with our listeners, am I right to say that travel is the reason why it's continuing to grow? Because, when you're saying 4%, our listeners might say, what does that mean to me? And so, I kind of want you to say in layman's term, what does that mean to them? And then also in your crystal ball, what changes can you predict for the nursing and allied industry? What's to come?
Yeah, it's interesting because when I say that healthcare staffing is expected to grow, by 4% in 2020 alone, it could actually be even higher, except that the limiting factor of the growth is actually a lack of supply of clinicians. There's actually more orders out there than what the staffing firms are able to keep up with and put into placements. And so it actually could potentially be even, faster. But I think that one thing that our travel nurses and allied health professionals may, want to be, thinking about, and I think that they're already seeing it, is that there's a lot of, change happening in the industry, driven by these healthcare trends. And so we talked a little bit about the outpatient setting, before, even though, hospitals will still be the largest employer, there really is a movement within healthcare to drive care into the community where the patient is, into less costly setting, less acute settings. And so we want to get people the right kind of care for whatever condition they have in their own setting, like in the right type of facility. And so that is, absolutely, continuing to happen. We're going to see just more in outpatient. But I think that they'll also see, just more technology coming our way and impacting healthcare. It's already happening. And so, sometimes I think about things like I ponder to myself, like, can clinicians and physicians ever be, replaced by robots, right? Because there is a lot of, automation happening right now. There's new tech tools coming out, but there's also, artificial intelligence has been coming to, healthcare as well. And so, in the past, we've been seeing AI, right, artificial intelligence, working behind the scenes in healthcare, and it's been used to, say, assist physicians in providing patient care. So, for example, right now we already have, in some cases, artificial intelligence is helping to pre-interpret MRI scans and detect possible cancer in imaging tests. They still absolutely want the radiologist to look at the images and make the call. So we're not totally relying on robots or AI to do diagnostics, right? But in the past,
that's good to hear.
that was very much a behind the scenes, kind of thing. But now what we're starting to see is that, even AI powered technology, it's going to come out from being behind the scenes, and it's going to start interfacing directly with patients to collect some of the initial information about their symptoms and vitals. So, one example of that is there are these med clinics, ACOS med clinics, that have been opening in Safeway stores in Phoenix. And so a patient today can walk into one of those stores, can go up to a self-service kiosk, and can fill out, a bunch of questions that, talk about that person's medical history, their medications, their allergies, their symptoms. There's even equipment that they can use to self-diagnose. So there's a stethoscope, there's a thermometer, there's a blood pressure machine. They can have images or pictures taken of the patient's throat and their ear and their nose, and then all of that gets uploaded into this kiosk. And even though there's a medical assistant on standby to help if it's needed, there's no on-site physician or nurse in that clinic. And so the kiosk collects all that information, and it can even, eventually, actually, I think it's happening. They're using the AI to look at that information and make a pre-diagnosis. But then what happens is you're at the kiosk, and a real clinician, like a nurse practitioner or physician, actually comes online, right, and then joins you. And so now you're having a live interaction through this kiosk, and ultimately that clinician is making the call on what your diagnosis is. But a whole bunch of stuff was done, where the patient, him or herself, interacted directly with technology to get that process started. And so once the actual physician or NP, makes the diagnosis, they can, write a prescription, and then you can literally just go to that pharmacy that's right there and have your prescription filled. So, these are interactions that are happening, in less than half an hour, right? So you walk in, you can actually get examined within half an hour. You can have your prescription filled out. And if you don't have insurance, you can get this done for about $75, right? So, the healthcare world is trying really hard to bring it to you, to the community, to make it, easy through technology. And so that's happening. But you can see that, the nurse and the physician is not being replaced.
Yeah.
Right.
But
and,
I can see some pros and cons to that, Amy. Sorry to interrupt. I just, know, my challenge with that is that, I think of, especially with different cultures, and, I come from an Asian culture, and it's already tough enough to get my mom to the doctor, but also, you give them, my mom into something like that, she's going to take it. But the problem is you get someone who's very resistant to a medical professional to go and use something like that. They might miss some really important or high risk diagnosis. They might risk some simple, symptoms that maybe are chronic, or something that is dangerous. They might just go in for the easy stuff, but then that kiosk isn't going to tell you that this is something that has been going on all the time. And then the other thing I have is everything's hackable nowadays, and it just seems everything is hackable. And I don't know, I mean, call me naive, but that's just something that to me, it is just high risk. And I don't know, that would be a great discussion or a debate for a panel sometime. We should think about that.
Yeah, that would be something that would be great to explore, because cybersecurity and security has always been a huge issue in healthcare, and so that's something that we absolutely, the healthcare systems are going to continue to focus on that because of its importance. Regarding the diagnoses piece of it, I think that that's why we're still having clinicians ultimately make the diagnostic call, and we're not over relying on technology to make that call. So we should look at it as the technology is there to supplement the diagnosis. It's not there to actually, make the diagnosis. And there's also, some elements of AI that, AI it's just not sophisticated enough at this point to do certain things like show empathy or compassion, right? Which is very needed in a patient interaction, and it's also, not AI has not reached a point yet where it can actually show common sense. And so those are all, reasons why, we would not over-rely on the technology for the diagnosis, but we should think of it as, a very powerful and helpful way to supplement these, diagnoses. So it's more to help figure out who might be at highest risk for certain things. The other important thing about technology, and this goes outside of AI, is telemedicine has been around for a long time, but we'll probably continue to see an embracement of telemedicine over time. So in 2019, a survey was done by Rock Health and the Stanford in the Stanford Medicine Center for Digital Health. They did a survey of 4,000 U.S. adults, and they found that about a quarter of them had used live video telemedicine over the past 12 months. So, it is happening. It is getting adopted. The VA is actually also accelerating their use of telemedicine. And so they actually, in May of 2018, they had enacted the VA they came up with an Anywhere to Anywhere initiative where they sort of removed the barriers to state licensing requirements for the VA providers. But it resulted in telemedicine being used by 17%. It was a 17% increase in telemedicine usage by veterans. So sometimes lifting these barriers can be helpful. And so, the VA's program is sort of like a first step in terms of sort of role modeling, this kind of national medical practicing, licensing concept. So we don't really know where that's going to go, but, it's a positive, good first step to observe.
And like I said, I can see some pros and I can see some cons. And the pros is you're meeting the patient where they're at. And that is a pro. But there are some cons. And like I said, I think it would be a great discussion that maybe we can talk about. I don't know. What do you think, Matt, to do a panel discussion in the future about?
Well, I nerd out about technology. I could talk for days about
yes,
it. But
I
want to. I think it's interesting, and without a doubt, we could talk for days. I kind of want to circle back a little bit to what you see, Amy, when you're talking about what's the next big things, because I think this technology, I'm all about the access and especially piloting programs that allow people to get healthcare where they are at. That's to me is exciting, and I think we could come and we could talk for days. But when it comes to the next big things, one of the things we saw in the therapy world was PDPM. And that you alluded to that a little bit earlier, Amy, there's a little bit of a bump in the road for therapy, but getting through that, what are some of the next big things? It doesn't have to be allied specific or nursing specific, but some of the things that you see right on the horizon that you would say this is going to affect either positively or maybe not so positively affect the industry.
Well, PDPM came into play on October 1st, and that did impact therapy in the skilled nursing facilities. And the next one after that was the PDGM, which was going to impact similarly in the home health world, and that's set to start on January 1st. And so, my guess is, they're sort of similar impacts in reimbursement rates for those facilities. So they could have similar impacts. And there were quite a few anecdotal instances of therapists having their hours reduced or even having some layoffs. But when you take a step back and you look at the bigger picture, a couple things to think about. One is that these reimbursement rate changes and shifts from minutes or from volume reimbursements to value-based reimbursements. This has been happening for some time. This is not the first time that the therapists have been sort of disrupted like this. They survived for sure, and so it could continue to happen from time to time. But what I will say about, for example, with physical therapists, I once had this amazing opportunity to shadow a physical therapist who was a home health physical therapist. And so I followed her around to her patient interactions, for a day. And when you see the impact that they have on the patients, and you realize, wow, this must, from a health perspective and a healing perspective, this has such a tremendous positive impact on patients. When you see that, like it's almost like you realize, like that this is going to remain strong, forever, because it's an essential part of care, right? It makes such a huge difference. And, I'm pretty sure that, that's why, despite these, little, bumps in the road, the projections of these, physical therapists in the long term, I mean, they're, I believe, expected to grow. I think I earlier said 22% over 10 years, right? And so when you see a physical therapist actually in action, with a patient, it's not hard to sort of believe this. And so that's, to answer your question around the disruption, I think it'll be fine. And, these reimbursement rate things will likely continue to happen over the long term, especially around, like bundled payments initiatives. And so it'll continue to happen. There'll probably continue to be, small disruptions. But I think that, at the end of the day, the clinician always makes the comeback, right? Because they're just so needed, in our healthcare system. I think, another trend that's very interesting, and this is sort of going back to, technology versus, reimbursement rates. I just also want to point out that as far as technology goes, the technology will also hopefully make the clinicians' work even better. And what I mean by that is, so for example, right now, sometimes, nurses, they, do some pretty arduous hard work. I mean, they have to lift bodies. It takes quite a bit of strength to do that. It can be very tiring, especially in a 12-hour shift. So you actually have to physically be in good condition to be, a nurse. And so places where, robots can come in and really be helpful to the nurses in doing their, in delivering patient care. So, for example, there will be exoskeleton robots that can come and actually do some of the heavy lifting for us, right? And that just makes a lot of sense, because we don't want to have nurses out there with, workers' comp injuries, right? We want them focused on delivering care and not necessarily, lifting bodies all the time. So those are examples of like repetitive tasks, right? Or where, perhaps we can alleviate, some of the nurses' responsibilities and allow them to really focus on the patient care and being at the bedside. So those are some important things to think about. Another one is in surgery, there's robots that are, not robots, but like there's technology that's coming out that's going to make it very helpful for surgeons to do surgery more precisely, faster, with better patient outcomes. And so then the surgeons can take more breaks, and they're not standing there in the same position for hours and hours on end. And that should help our surgeons to have fewer, workers' comp injuries, or fewer like neck injuries from having to hold themselves in the same position for so long. So a lot of this technology will also, I hope, help the clinicians themselves. Other
also help the
examples
hospitals,
there's
right?
robots that will do disinfections, right? Like that's another area where a robot could be superior to a human, and that's less about patient care.
But also help out the hospitals when we're talking about FMLA and medical costs in that way.
Yes.
So, we've covered a lot today. Definitely, I kind of want to wrap it up with what we've covered. Lots of what I'm gathering is that we're not going anywhere. the travel, there's always going to be a need. There's growth in the allied and nursing fields, with growth being predicted by the BLS in both markets. But also for travel, even though unemployment have really, really low numbers, the travel needs are there, whether it's geographic based. Anything else that you can wrap up for us, just to kind of help our listeners out there?
Yeah, the only other trend I would point out is there's a possibility that temporary staffing of healthcare clinicians, continues to grow, simply because it feels like our population at large is becoming more and more interested in this gig economy type of work. And so as our whole population embraces it, it's possible that our workforce might, shift, and, in that regard, travel nursing and travel allied, or even just, per diem assignments become more and more popular across our healthcare practitioners, just because of this, this interesting trend for the gig economy, in our overall population.
Yeah.
Amy, we've discussed a lot of exciting things in the industry right now, and I think the technology, the future is certainly bright when you start talking about the technology, about the demand. But if you were to break it down for traveling healthcare professionals today, what would your advice be? So really, your expertise, what would your advice be to those folks? I think that would be the question that we would want to ask.
Okay. I think the advice that I would have for clinicians who are considering taking a travel assignment or doing some temporary work, it's a really exciting time. And, let's say you've got 2 years of experience under your belt in an acute care setting. But if you're relatively new in your career, it might be a good time in your life to take a look at what other hospitals or settings you could go and try, right? And so you could use a travel position as a way to explore different geography in our country, to explore a different kind of setting, or perhaps there's a prestigious facility, and this is your chance to get in there. It's a great way to see lots of different hospitals and healthcare systems and the way they do things and what their best practices are. And I think that that's one of the most powerful things that a clinician can get out of having a travel experience or a temporary experience, is just the chance to experience how other systems do things. I think that's a great way to build your career and have some just very cool facilities on your resume.
That's great advice. Much of the need across the country is in a rural setting, exactly, where it may not necessarily be the most prestigious environment, but it certainly is no less important for the community, especially some of the smaller communities that are desperate for clinicians to come in there and deliver the best healthcare they can. That's huge.
Yeah.
And so maybe we can talk a little bit, or Amy, you can talk a little bit about the rural settings and the need for travel healthcare professionals in those settings as well.
Yeah, there's a huge need for healthcare practitioners in rural areas. That's why there's a lot of interest in telemedicine. But I think every rural community would actually prefer to have an actual clinician in their town, delivering great care to their community. And so, temporary staffing, these assignments, it's a great way to go be a part of a different community and explore a different geography, but also, have a really positive impact on that community, because, the newer generation, they really care a lot about making a difference. Part of their career has to, be sort of mission focused, and they really, really want to make a positive difference. And so, going into a rural community, at least for some period of time, can make a difference, and it could really feel personally rewarding as well. And so I think that again, it's another opportunity to explore different parts of your career, different things to do as part of your career, and just accumulate really amazing experiences. And so it's a great way for clinicians to, just take a look at, how can I expand that and diversify my set of experiences. And I think trying different communities is a great way.
And I think that's great. And I just to add on to that is also a great way to probably fine tune some skills, because I find that clinicians going into rural areas, they need to have a certain type of finesse, because your patients tend to be a little bit more conservative, and you really need to be able to those are those patients that you really need to meet them to where they are. And so for talking to travelers and also talking to managers, you really need to be able to learn your communication skills, your cultural skills, just all types of skills. And so for those clinicians and travelers that are looking to move upward and that mission seeking that you're talking about, Amy, rural is where it's at.
Very true, because as we said before, right, clinicians are unlikely to be replaced by robots, right? Because it's that bedside manner, the compassion, the empathy, the common sense, right? That only a clinician can really provide.
Well, I really, really appreciate you being here. Lots of information. I know that our listeners are probably going to want to have you back for that panel discussion, especially learning so much, and probably for us to learn more about AI and the future of that and telemedicine as well. Matt, do you have anything?
Yeah, thank you, Amy, for stopping by. I know you're very busy with SIA. Do great work at SIA. So thank you very much for taking the time with us. Before we let you go, we like to ask all of our guests a very simple question at the end. Amy, what is your why?
For me, I have found throughout my career that the thing that makes me happiest is helping other people, achieve their own personal and professional goals. And so I've always been a huge mentor to people that I meet. I love being a sounding board and a mentor, because I just simply love watching people achieve their dreams and live out their dreams. It absolutely, that's literally the thing that makes me happiest in life. And so I feel like that's why, being in this SIA role is sort of ideal for me, because, I came from the healthcare staffing industry. It's where I advanced my career. And so I really, really have a fondness for the healthcare staffing industry in general. And so the ability to help all of the staffing companies in our industry continue to grow, and helping the business owners and achieve their goals. I mean, that actually really, really makes me happy. And that's why, I enjoy this so much. And likewise, seeing clinicians and physicians be able to fulfill their own personal dreams and goals and be a part of this healthcare system. The whole thing just sort of, drives me and makes me happy.
We also love to hear the whys from the travel healthcare community. Let's listen in.
Nathan Abbott. I'm a radiology traveler. I travel because it gives me the freedom and the opportunity to see new places and meet new people and experience new things. I figured that this would be an opportunity to be able to do that while I'm younger instead of waiting until I retire.
We love to hear from our listeners, so thanks again for listening. And please drop us a review and let us know what your thoughts are on today's topic or anything else you'd like to discuss. And as always, thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Sunny. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
You've been listening to Cardium from Aureus Medical with your hosts, Sunny and Matt. We're the podcast that gets to the heart of travel healthcare. To subscribe, access show notes, or to learn more, visit cardiumpodcast.com. CARDIUM podcast.com. Or wherever you're listening, be sure to rate us, review, and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time.